Well, welcome back to Talk Local here on Rogers TV. We continue tonight with our Vital Signs series. That is the report released in the fall. Takes a look at 11 key indicators in our community, assigns a grade to each of those indicators, and really just gives us the snapshot of where we stand as a region. And then we, here on this program, have conversations about each of those indicators to give you a better sense. And one of the things the creators of the Vital Signs report will always tell us is that getting the conversation started is the first step. And then what are we going to do with what we have learned? That, of course, becomes the challenge for all of us. Right now, we're taking a look at the gap between the rich and the poor. And we've had the opportunity to talk about the need in this community and the support that is being provided to help bridge the gap between rich and poor. The question I was asking, do you donate to charity? Any charity at all? Do you make those donations? I know we're getting up on tax time, and you might be gathering those receipts together for your annual tax return. Number to reach us on the program is 519-893-6905. Our email address is talklocal@rogers.com. And this gap between the rich and the poor, Jane, do you see a generosity in this community that helps us to bridge that gap?
We certainly see generosity that I can't imagine is matched in any other community. We have a history across Waterloo region of responding to needs and to challenges. And you can certainly hear one story after story after story. Certainly, I'm well aware of communities that have banded together to buy gifts and presents for those in need. I spoke earlier about support for children going to camp, and we know that in any time of any kind of crisis that this community pulls together with a record-breaking response.
Ernie, I thought John earlier used a tremendous analogy when he talked about the elastic snapping, because we've got this ever-widening gap. What is the danger we face as a community as that elastic gets pulled more and more taut? If it does snap, I mean, what is the danger that we face as we watch this gap between rich and poor get wider?
There are probably a few dangers. It's a terrific community for philanthropy, but philanthropy works well at dealing with the effects of poverty. It doesn't deal with poverty. It doesn't make somebody less poor. And if we have more and more people getting poorer and poorer, philanthropy isn't even going to be able to keep up with the effects of the poverty. So one of the things that may happen, and it's been happening across Canada, is that fewer and fewer people, as a percentage of the population, are actually making charitable donations. The ones who are making somewhat larger ones, but the donors are going down in number. If that were to continue, then we'd lose on both ends. We'd lose the donation power to some degree, and we'd still have the problem of increasing poverty. And the problem is that philanthropy doesn't deal with the root causes of why people are poor. So we also need at the same time to look at the structure of an economy and a wealth system that packs wealth at the top 10% of the population. 58% of Canada's wealth is owned by the top 10% of the population. The bottom 10% of the population has negative wealth. They owe more than everything they own is worth. And until you start to rebalance that, we can face a lot of problems because it's getting worse at both ends.
Does that then contribute at all to this sense of donor fatigue that you suggest? I mean, is there a sense that people are throwing up their hands saying, I can't help, why would I continue with the efforts I've been making so far?
It certainly makes it more difficult for charities in any community to make a good pitch to a potential donor, because an intelligent donor is going to say, you keep coming back to me every year and telling me the problems are getting worse, we need more money. What's happening? Why are the problems getting worse and I'm giving you more and more money? I thought that I was giving you money to lessen problems. And so if we're losing more down at the poor end, low-income end, then we're gaining at the upper ends. Eventually donors are going to just toss up their hands and say, how is this helping?
Right. John, let's take a look specifically at the House of Friendship, because it's a very well-known agency in this city, in this region. And what are the key challenges that you face? I know there's the emergency hamper program, the food hampers that we talked about already. But in terms of the challenges, what's the first line of defense, if you will, as people come in? Is it to provide that emergency shelter? Is it food? I mean, what do you see as the main challenges?
Well, it's interesting with what Ernie's talking about, and in the conversation about donors. I mean, one of the easy parts for House of Friendship is sometimes responding to some of the effects of poverty. So at Christmas time, the Christmas hamper program, the turkey drive, things that people can get their head around and that are very tangible, helping someone with shelter or with food, I think we can get a real good response. But Ernie really points at something deeper, and that's harder because we also run community centers. And the community centers are dealing with some of the effects of poverty, and are trying to do grassroots work. And to try to get donors and money to that is far more challenging. It's a lot easier to sell, give us $50 and that'll help someone give shelter for a night. Well, that's an easy concept to kind of get around, and people like sort of contributing towards it because that makes them feel good, and that is helpful, and we need that. It's just interesting because at House of Friendship we sort of have both sides. We have sort of the stuff, where we're basically doing reactive work, the shelter, emergency food hamper, but then we also are on the other end where we're doing proactive work, where we are trying to provide affordable housing like we do at Charles Village or EB Village, or in our community centers, where we're right in the communities where there is a lot of low-income unemployment and trying to address their needs. But I have to tell you that the funding and the donor base for anything that's more proactive, a little bit harder to define, sort of the root causes of poverty, I mean, we have a really tough time getting funding for that.
So in that sense, John, are we suggesting perhaps that there is a certain, I don't know if level is the right word, but level of poverty that is invisible? Because you're looking at these root causes, and you understand, I'm getting the sense that if you address these root causes, you can eradicate some of the poverty down the road. So is there almost an invisibility, or is it not right yet to call it poverty at that proactive end?
I don't know if it's invisible. I think poverty is incredibly complex. It's a lot of systems interacting, and it's not one factor, and that's why it's such a difficult issue, is that it has multi-layers of complexity, and it's really hard to address. So I'm not saying it's invisible, but some of it is harder to get your head around, and the solution is a lot harder to come up with.
Sure.